Hey guys, it's Graham. What's crackin'? We continue our reading of What So Proudly We Hail with a pair of documents that address a central question of our founding, the Declaration of Independence and the Gettysburg Address. It's very difficult to share my experiences with this book and not tell anecdotes about my brother, Dr. Farmer. Not only did he give me my copy, he's also been the main driving force in my life when it comes to studying government and political philosophy. I've always had an interest in history, and he's nudged me toward this subset over the years. About a decade ago, when he was working on his dissertation, I asked him what the focus was, and he gave a very broad answer that more or less forced him to examine the entire history of Republican government. That is to say, Republican with a small r, and not just in America. We're not the first country to try a republic, but like all who have, we hoped to be the one to get it absolutely right. Why did the founders think a republic would work? Why choose that instead of another crown and throne? Well, it helps to remember that they were severing ties with a monarchy, and that the monarchy had not only failed to provide a good government to the people, it was actively committing crimes against them. The Declaration was effectively written as a breakup letter to the British monarchy, explaining how and why the Americans felt they needed to remove themselves from the Crown's powers. Take a look at these lines in the opening paragraph of the Declaration. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. There's a poetic thoroughness to the writing in this document, and we can thank Thomas Jefferson for that. A plain reading of it is enough to help you understand why Nicolas Cage was so moved by it in National Treasure, but I digress. The point of the opening was to make the case for the document itself, saying, we're going to break up, and we're going to make a long list of reasons so you get why. The American Revolution is often chalked up to just a fight over taxes. That played a part, sure. If you look at the whole Declaration, though, you'll see a laundry list of reasons why the colonists wanted to punt King George. These include abusing the court system, keeping standing armies, quartering troops in citizens' homes, keeping laws in place past their expiration dates, agitating the Indians so they'd pick fights with Americans on the frontier, and more. From where the colonists were sitting, King George was basically flogging them for economic output and flexing on them whenever they spoke up about how they didn't like it. Small wonder that they got tired of it. Kind of activates the almonds when you read through this list and you start to see just how many of these things are problems the federal government causes today, but that's none of my business. Anyway, the Declaration of Independence was a well-sourced and well-explained document that made the case for separation and then initiated said separation. The Constitution would come along more than a decade later to finalize the process of creating a new country. I'll have to talk about that one in another episode. At the end of the day, our new experiment in self-government began on July 2nd, 1776. That was the initial signing of the Declaration. It was just finalized on the 4th. Now we seg into the Gettysburg Address, and you might be asking what this has to do with a founding document. Well, let's frame this one up a little bit. Abraham Lincoln was only the 16th president of this country. The Civil War took place less than 90 years after the American Revolution. That's few enough generations for people to have grandparents who fought in it. In fact, Confederate General Robert E. Lee's father, Harry Lee, fought alongside George Washington in the Revolution. Both were Virginia men. Harry fathered Robert at the ripe age of 51, and Robert was 57 when the Civil War broke out, so neither man was what you'd call a spring chicken. The point is that the Civil War and the Revolution were closer than people today give them credit for. That's also relevant because the United States was still very young as a country. Other republics around the world haven't lasted that long, and others are younger still. Post-Franco Spain, for example, has only been under its current constitution for about 50 years. The Soviet Union, which called itself a republic on paper, collapsed after 6 decades. Self-government is a tricky experiment, and it depends heavily on the character and the will of the people who are stewards of the nation. Abe Lincoln, in the middle of the Civil War, gave this address not far from Harrisburg, the capital of Pennsylvania, and just a few hours' drive from where the Declaration was signed. Maybe that's why he was thinking about it. The address itself is pretty short, less than 300 words, and you can find copies of it online or in this book. I recommend you read it for yourself. The famous opening words, 77 years ago, are an immediate reminder that the country was still young, and that to some degree the Civil War was connected to the Revolution. Ultimately, it was the contest that would decide whether their republic would continue to exist as constituted, that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. That question is still relevant in the 21st century. On paper, it is we, the citizens of America, who govern our nation. We do it by sending 435 congressmen, 100 senators, and 1 president to Washington, in the hopes that they have enough integrity to govern in good faith. Between you and me, they're not doing so well with that integrity part. So how are we going to answer that question? With the Declaration, the founders said, "This government sucks, we're scrapping it and making our own." With the Gettysburg Address, Lincoln said, "Can we keep making this work? We ought to." It's been 160 years and 30 presidents since he put that question to the people of this nation. Dr. Farmer tells me that historically the average lifespan of a healthy republic is about 200 years, and we blew past that marker in the 1970s. In 2026, the Declaration of Independence will turn 250 years old. In 2049, the Constitution will hit that same milestone. Whether our country continues to survive as a republic is up to us, the citizens of said republic. All of us. It will depend on our values and our actions. Ultimately, our words and proclamations will have little to do with it all if we don't live up to the challenge of governing ourselves. I hope this has given you something to think about, maybe something to talk about with your neighbors. What did it cost to start this country in terms of blood, sweat, and tears? What has it cost to preserve it over the centuries? And what will it cost us to yet preserve it here at home? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching. Please like the video if you will, so YouTube will recommend my stuff to more viewers. Drive safe. I'll see you out there.